The icy winds howled across the frozen tundra of the Arctic, whipping up clouds of powdery snow that stung the faces of the alien survey team. Their environmental suits protected them from the bitter cold. But the desolate landscape was still a harsh reminder of the extremes this remote region could reach. Biosignatures detected, announced Zrathi, the team's lead scientist. Her multifaceted eyes studied the holographic display projected from her wrist. Mounted scanner, approximately 20 meters below the surface. Gulvrix, the hulking security officer, gripped his plasma rifle tighter. Could be an indigenous life form. Many species have adapted to survive in these conditions. Zrathi shook her head, her antenna-like. Sensors twitching. No, the biosignatures are distinctly different, almost alien to this planet. The other three members of the team exchanged puzzled looks through their face. Plates. Alien. On a world like this, it seemed impossible, yet the sensors didn't lie. Well, whatever it is, we're here to investigate, Gulvrix rumbled, his deep voice resonating through his armored suit. Let's dig it up and find out. With a nod of agreement from Zrathi, the team activated their suit's anti-grav modules, allowing them to hover just above the icy ground. They carefully melted their way through the layers of compacted snow and permafrost, revealing a strange artificial structure buried beneath. It was a sleek metal chamber, its surface scored with age, but still remarkably intact. Strange, alien symbols were etched across its length, utterly incomprehensible to the survey team. These markings. I've never seen anything like them, Zrathi murmured, her tone a mix of awe and apprehension. Gulvrix stepped forward, his rifle at the ready. Only one way to find out what's inside. Stand back. With a few deft commands, he activated the chamber's exterior release mechanism. Hydraulic seals hissed as the airlock cycled open, venting a plume of frigid vapor into the Arctic air. The team peered inside, their suit lights illuminating the cramped interior. And there, cocooned in a faintly glowing stasis field, was the unmistakable form of a humanoid figure. By the ancients, Zrathi gasped. Gulvrix's grip tightened on his rifle as he studied the alien being. Human. I've only seen images, but there's no mistaking those features. His tone hardened. We were told they were extinct. The other members of the team exchanged uneasy glances. Humans, the once mighty species that had risen to galactic prominence, only to mysteriously vanish from the cosmic stage eons ago. Their civilization had crumbled, their worlds left abandoned, as if every last one of them had simply disappeared. And now, after countless cycles, they had found one. We have to revive it, Zrathi stated, her voice wavering with a mix of scientific curiosity and dread. Think of what we could learn. Gulvrix's suit. Light swept across the alien's prone form. That's assuming it's even still alive after all this time. But you're right, if there's a chance to interact with a real human, we have to take it. With great care, the team extracted the stasis chamber from the ice and loaded it onto their transport. They checked the environmental seals and life support systems before initiating the alien's delicate revival sequence. Slowly, the glowing stasis field dissipated, and the human's vital signs began to stabilize. Its eyes remained closed, but its chest rose and fell with steady breaths. It was alive. Against all odds, this ancient relic of a bygone era still clung to life. Zrathi watched the readouts with a mixture of fascination and trepidation. Remarkable. To think one of them has survived all this time. But why? And how? Before anyone could venture a guess, the human's eyes suddenly snapped open. There was a moment of stillness, of held breaths, as those piercing eyes slowly swept across the gathered aliens. Then it moved. Faster than any of them could react. The human lunged forward, slamming its fist into the transparent steel panel separating it from the team. The aliens recoiled in shock as the alien regarded them with an expression of pure, unbridled fury. "You," it snarled, its voice a ragged growl. The team could only stare in stunned silence, too rattled to formulate a response. Gulvrix lifted his rifle, but the human's gaze locked onto the weapon with searing intensity. "Don't even think about it," the alien hissed. "Now, you're going to tell me exactly what's going on here, starting with who you are and why you've woken me up." Zrathi swallowed hard, her racing thoughts struggling to make sense of the situation. Against her better judgment, she found herself speaking. "We are a survey team from the United Systems Alliance," she began, silently hoping her words would pacify the enraged human. "We discovered your stasis chamber while mapping this region of the Arctic Circle on Earth. We had no idea humans still existed." The alien's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Earth? You've got some nerve calling this place by its ancient name. As for humans, well, I'm the last of my kind, thanks to you monstrosities." Despite her growing unease, Zrathi pressed on. "I don't understand. We know humans vanished from the galactic stage ages ago, but we never knew why. Please, if you can explain what happened." "Nuff!" the human roared, slamming its fist against the transparent steel again. "I've heard more than enough of your lies. I was there when your ancestors tried to wipe us out, all because we dared to defy your twisted idea of galactic conquest." The survey team collectively recoiled, their eyes widening in shock and horror. Genocide against the humans. It seemed unfathomable, yet the sheer rage burning in the alien's eyes spoke of an ancient trauma too profound for words. Gulvrix found his voice, his deep tones strained with disbelief. That's impossible. The histories say nothing of such an atrocity. We were told your worlds were abandoned, not exterminated." The human finished with a sardonic sneer. "Of course, your precious histories would conveniently omit that horrific truth. But I was there. I saw it all." Its eyes bored into each of them, as if searing the nightmarish memories into their minds. "Our worlds in flames. Our cities reduced to rubble by your ancestors' weapons. Men, women, children, slaughtered without mercy, simply because we dared to forge our own path instead of bowing to your twisted vision of the galaxy." Tears of rage streamed down the human's face, its fists clenching until its knuckles turned white. "You tried to kill us all, but we fought back even as our numbers dwindled. In one last desperate gambit, I was chosen, the last survivor, and placed into cryostasis. My people's legacy, frozen in time, determined to return one day and make you bastards pay for your crimes." A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the weight of the human's words settled upon them all. Zrathi felt her mind reeling, unable to process the horrific implications. That's not possible," she finally managed to say, her voice a hoarse whisper. "Such an atrocity would never have been covered up. Not on that scale." "Oh, but it was," the human stated, its expression hardening into a mask of pure loathing. "Your ancestors expunged every last record of our existence from your histories. We became nothing but a lost footnote, our genocide justifying itself through silence and lies." It leaned closer to the transparent steel, its piercing gaze fixed on each of them in turn. "But I remember. And now the last human has awoken to a galaxy still under your twisted shadow. So tell me, what happens next? Do you try to finish what your ancestors started all those years ago? Or do you let me go to reign long, overdue vengeance upon those who tried to extinguish my kind?" The weight of the human's words seemed to crush the air from the chamber. Zrathi felt her mind spinning, unable to reconcile the brutal truth she had just heard. Could it be true? Could their ancestors, the very founders of their modern civilization, have committed such an unspeakable atrocity? The mere idea defied everything she had been taught, everything she believed about her people and their history. But the undisguised fury in the human's eyes, the depth of its pain, it rang with an authenticity that couldn't be denied. Suddenly, the missing pieces of history began to fall into place. The mysterious disappearance of the humans, the inexplicable gaps and contradictions in the ancient records. It all made a horrific sort of sense. No, she finally managed to say, her voice trembling. No, we... The other members of her team seemed to share her sentiment, their expressions a mixture of shock, revulsion, and dawning realization. Even Gulvrix had lowered his rifle, his usual stoic demeanor cracked by the weight of the human's accusations. Then you know what you must do, the human growled, leaning back with a look of grim triumph. Let me go. Give me the chance to make things right, to avenge those who were taken from me. Part of Zrathi's mind recoiled at the thought. To release this human, this living embodiment of an ancient trauma, upon an unsuspecting galaxy. It went against every principle of her scientific training, her ethical beliefs. And yet, what right did she have to judge? To condemn the last remnant of a species that had suffered a genocide beyond comprehension, if even a fraction of the human story was true, then perhaps its desire for vengeance, as twisted as it might seem, was justified. We can't make that decision, she finally said, her tone heavy with reluctant realization. What you've told us, it changes everything we thought we knew. The entireties must hear this and decide how to proceed. For a long moment, the human simply stared at her, as if weighing the sincerity of her words. Then it gave a curt nod. Very well. Take me to your authorities. Let them bear witness to the truth their ancestors tried to bury. And then, its eyes hardened once more. Then they can choose peaceful coexistence with the last human, or the destruction they so narrowly avoided all those cycles ago. As the human fell silent, the chamber was consumed by a tense, quiet, punctuated only by the faint hum of the life support systems. Zrathi felt herself shudder, suddenly aware of the enormity of what she had just set in motion. She had awoken the last of an extinct species, one that carried the burning essence of a genocide most thought had never happened. And now, that last human demanded to be brought before the galactic authorities themselves, to bear witness to a truth that could shatter the foundations of their entire society. Zrathi fought down a rising sense of trepidation as she tapped the comlink on her wrist. This is Survey Team Theta 9, Delta to Central Command. She began, her voice strained but resolute. We have an extraordinary discovery to report. And so began a series of events that would echo across the entire galaxy, a reckoning eons in the making, with the fate of races and civilizations hanging in the balance. The last human had awoken, and the galaxy would never be the same. The alien council chambers on the capital world of Xentaris were a sprawling, domed amphitheater designed to accommodate representatives from every member species of the United Systems Alliance. Row upon row of raised seating surrounded a central dais, where the gathered dignitaries could assemble to debate the issues facing their civilizations. Today, however, an eerie hush had fallen over the chambers. Alien representatives of every conceivable shape and form sat in anxious stillness, their faces creased with a mixture of apprehension and morbid fascination, because today they would bear witness to something that should have been utterly impossible. The last surviving human. A murmur of uneasy whispers rippled through the crowd as the transperisteel isolation chamber was levitated into the center of the dais, its archaic human symbols glinting in the chamber's soft light. Within, the cryogenically preserved figure floated in a faintly glowing stasis field, its features obscured by the icy vapor clinging to the chamber's interior. Rithis, the first speaker and the highest-ranking official of the Alliance, raised her tentacled appendage for silence. The hushed chamber fell deathly quiet as all eyes turned towards the alien, being they had believed extinct for untold ages. "Esteemed representatives," Rithis began, her amplified voice resonating through the amphitheater speakers. "We have convened this extraordinary session to bear witness to a discovery that may very well reshape our understanding of history itself." She swept her appendages in an expansive gesture, encompassing the gathered aliens. "For cycles beyond counting, we have believed the humans, once one of the galaxy's most promising civilizations, to have simply vanished, abandoned their worlds and outposts without a trace, leaving behind only fragmented records and unanswered questions." A series of holographic displays flickered to life around the isolation chamber, depicting crumbling cities and derelict spacecraft, the only remaining vestiges of human civilization. "We have puzzled over their disappearance for ages," Rithis continued, formulating theory after theory to explain how such an advanced species could have simply ceased to exist. Her voice took on a somber tone, her appendage sweeping towards the isolation chamber. "But now, it seems, we may finally have an answer. An answer that, if true, will shatter everything we thought we knew about our own history and the foundations upon which our society was built." Rithis fixed the gathered representatives with an intense stare, letting the weight of her words sink in. Then, with a subtle gesture, she activated the isolation chamber's release protocols. Hydraulic seals hissed as the containment fields dropped, and the frozen vapor began to dissipate. And there, suspended within the archaic alien device, was the unmistakable form of a human. A collective gasp rippled through the amphitheater as the assembled aliens took in the sight before them. Some recoiled in shock. Others leaned forward with rapt fascination. But all were transfixed by the presence of a being that should have been nothing more than a footnote in the pages of their history texts. The human's eyes remained closed, its features perfectly preserved by the stasis field that had kept it in a deathless slumber for untold ages. But as the reanimation sequence continued, those eyes slowly flickered open, revealing a pair of intense, piercing orbs that swept across the gathered aliens. It was Rithis who finally broke the heavy silence, addressing the human in a tone laced with awe and trepidation. "Human," she began, forming the word with an alien lilt. "We have summoned you here before this council to bear witness to a truth we were believed lost to the ages. A truth that, if you can provide it, may forever alter the course of our civilizations." She gestured to the hovering holographic displays, which now depicted the mysterious artifacts and ruins that were all that remained of human civilization. "We know precious little of what became of your species. The histories are fragmentary at best. But you," her appendage motioned towards the isolation chamber, "you, it seems, are the last. The final chapters of a story we had feared lost forever." The human's gaze hardened as it studied the assembled representatives. Its eyes burned with a simmering fury that caused more than a few of the aliens to shift uncomfortably. "You want to know what happened to my kind?" It finally rasped, its voice rough but laced with a deep, ancient pain. "You want to know the truth your precious histories have tried so hard to bury?" It leaned forward, as if straining against the invisible bonds of the stasis field. "Very well then. I'll tell you. But brace yourselves, because the truth is more horrific than anything you could ever imagine." As the human began to speak, the amphitheater seemed to grow deathly still. Every alien focused intently on the words that spilled forth, a damning tale of genocide and betrayal that would shake the very foundations of their civilization. In the days and cycles that followed, the human's testimony swept across the United Systems Alliance like a shockwave, igniting a maelstrom of controversy, outrage, and soul. searching on a galactic scale. The tale the human told was one of unspeakable atrocity, a systematic campaign of extermination waged against its species by the ancestors of the modern races now comprising the Alliance. A xenocidal purge driven by a twisted ideology of conquest and subjugation, seeking to crush any civilization that dared to defy the ancient insurgents' vision of a unified galaxy under their dominion. As the human recounted the nightmarish details, worlds burned to cinders, cities reduced to rubble, billions massacred without mercy. A pall of horrified silence fell over the assembled aliens. Some openly wept as the magnitude of the atrocities sank in, while others could only sit in stunned disbelief. "They tried to exterminate us," the human growled, its voice laced with a fury that had burned for untold ages. "Kill every last man, woman, and child. Scour our very existence from the galaxy they sought to dominate utterly." Its piercing gaze swept over the gathered representatives, pinning them with the weight of its suffering. But we fought back, even as our worlds fell one by one, in one final, desperate gambit to preserve the last flicker of our civilization. I was chosen as the sole survivor and placed into cryostasis. It slammed its fist against the transparasteel chamber, the impacts resonating through the amphitheater. I was to be the enduring flame, the legacy of humanity, frozen in time until I could one day return to reap our vengeance upon those who tried to extinguish us. Those last words seemed to hang in the air like a smothering shroud, suffocating the chamber with their sheer, undisguised loathing. The aliens sat in stunned stillness, their eyes wide with dawning realization and horror. Rhinthus was the first to find her voice again, the words emerging as a strained rasp. This is unspeakable. If what you say is true, then our entire civilization is built upon a foundation of genocide, of atrocities we were taught never happened. Her appendages swept over the gathered representatives, disgust and shame twisting her features. How could we have been so blind, so utterly ignorant of the horrific acts our ancestors committed in the name of? Of what? Conquest, subjugation, all while allowing the magnitude of their crimes to be erased, buried beneath our ignorance. One by one, other representatives began to rise from their seats, their voices raised in a clamor of horror, outrage, and denial. Heated accusations were flung across the amphitheater as the revelations tore at the seams of their society. Lies. This cannot be true. Our founders would never allow such abominations. But the human speaks the truth. Can you not see the pain in its eyes, the scars of past trauma that we inflicted? If this is true, then everything we've built is a lie, a sham erected on a foundation of bones. The cacophony spiraled, threatening to descend into utter chaos before Nrithis raised her appendages for silence once more. "Enough!" she cried, her amplified voice finally cutting through the din. This recrimination solves nothing. The truth, no matter how horrific, has been brought into the light at last. And now, we must decide how to confront it. She fixed the human with an intense, almost pleading look. "Human, last survivor of your kind. You have borne witness to a genocide most thought impossible, opened our eyes to a past we had willfully blinded ourselves to. So I ask you now, how can we possibly atone for the sins of our ancestors?" The human regarded her silently for a long moment, as if weighing the sincerity of her words. When it finally spoke, its voice was low and dangerous. "You ask how you can atone." It shook its head slowly. "There is no atonement for what was done to my kind. No penance grand enough to wash away the rivers of blood your ancestors spilled in their vengeful crusade." Its eyes seemed to blaze with an inner fire, burning with the intensity of a star-gone supernova. But if you are sincere in your desire to face the truth, if you truly wish to confront the reality of what your society was founded upon, then you have two choices. The human leaned closer to the transparisteel, its intense stare seeming to bore into the soul of every alien present. The first choice is this: release me from this chamber. Grant me the freedom to roam your stars and visit upon you the same merciless judgment your ancestors unleashed upon my kind all those ages ago. Let me become the instrument of vengeance humanity's anguished spirit demands. A horrified murmur rippled through the assembled aliens at the prospect of facing such unbridled retribution. But before the shock could swell into full-blown panic, the human held up a restraining hand. The second choice. It said, its tone becoming deathly quiet, is to let me go my own way. Give me a ship, resources, a new beginning, one where the last human can forge a path disconnected from this travesty you call civilization. I want nothing more to do with you or your kind. Simply let me slip into the cosmic night and be forgotten as my ancestors were. The amphitheater fell into a heavy silence as the weight of the human's ultimatum settled over them all like a viscous fog. In that moment, the future of entire civilizations, of the very trajectory of galactic society, seemed to teeter upon a blade's edge. It was Nrithis who finally found the courage to respond, her voice strained but resolute. You propose a terrible choice, one that, either way, can only lead to more suffering and anguish. She paused, seeming to weigh her next words carefully. And yet, you are the wronged party here, the last of a species that our ancestors tried to extinguish through unimaginable brutality. We have no right to judge how you choose to confront such an injustice. Her appendage swept over the hushed assembly in a solemn gesture. Representatives, we must decide. Unleash the last human upon our worlds as an instrument of judgment and retribution. Her voice wavered slightly. Or grant it its freedom, its path to forge anew, disconnected from our blood-stained legacy. As the weight of the moment stretched into eternity, the gathered aliens seemed to hold their collective breath. For in this decision rested the fate of races, and the possibility of atonement or damnation for the sins of a long-forgotten past. For long, agonizing moments, the amphitheater was consumed by a suffocating silence as the representatives grappled with the gravity of the choice laid before them. Some exchanged furtive glances, their expressions a mixture of shame, fear, and grim realization. Others simply stared at the frozen human, as if searching for answers to a question that had long eluded them. It was Nrithis who finally broke the stillness, her voice heavy but resolute. Representatives, she began, surveying the gathered aliens. This choice, this burden we now shoulder, it is one that strikes at the very core of what we have built our society upon. For too long, we have allowed ourselves to remain ignorant of the truth, blinded to the horrors our ancestors visited upon those who challenged their twisted dogma. Her appendages swept over the hushed assembly in an expansive gesture. But now, confronted with the terrible reality of our origins, we can no longer hide, no longer bury the travesty of the human's genocide beneath the weight of convenient falsehoods. Nrithis fixed her intense gaze upon the cryogenically preserved figure floating within the isolation chamber. Human, we have heard your words, borne witness to the nightmarish truth you have unveiled, and though our shame and revulsion burn like the heat of 1,000 suns, we cannot allow our crimes to be compounded further. She paused, seeming to steady herself against the weight of her next words. We cannot unleash you as an instrument of retribution, no matter how deserved. To do so would be to sink to the level of those whose actions we now revile. It would taint our present with the same brutality that stains our past. A soft murmur rippled through the gathered representatives, a mix of relief and disquiet. The human, for its part, remained motionless, its piercing gaze fixed upon Rythus with an inscrutable intensity. "Which leaves us with but one choice," the first speaker continued. "We must grant you your freedom, last of the humans, give you the means to forge a new path, untethered from the horrors our forebears visited upon your kind." With a subtle gesture, she activated the isolation chamber's release mechanisms. Hydraulic seals hissed as the archaic device cycled open, venting wisps of vaporous coolant into the amphitheater's air. "You are free, human," Rythus stated, her voice resonating through the stillness. "Free to go where you will, beyond the boundaries of our space and the crimes of our past." She swallowed hard, seeming to struggle against the weight of her own shame. "We can never atone for the genocide your species suffered. But perhaps, in this smallest of acts, we can take a first step on the long road towards confronting the truth." For a long moment, there was only silence as the human studied Rythus and the assembled dignitaries. Its expression remained unreadable, a rictus mask that betrayed none of the inner turmoil it surely felt. Then, almost imperceptibly, it nodded. As the stasis field deactivated fully, the human stepped out of the isolation chamber, its booted feet ringing against the dais' hard surface. It straightened to its full height, somehow seeming to loom over the gathered aliens, despite its unassuming stature. "So be it," it rasped, its voice little more than a gravelly whisper. "I will take my leave of this diseased civilization. Let the last ember of humanity burn in the cold of the void, far from your sight and sins." It leveled its gaze at Rythus, and for a fleeting instant, the first speaker thought she glimpsed an eternity of sorrow and pain burning in those eyes. But make no mistake. Though I walk alone into the night, humanity's restless spirit remains, untamed and unyielding. You may have smothered the flame of our present. Its eyes seem to blaze with a fierce inner light. But our future yet burns, simmering like the heart of a newborn star, brilliant, defiant, and awaiting the day when it will blaze forth anew. With those ominous words hanging in the air, the human turned and strode from the dais, disappearing through the amphitheater's towering egress doors. The gathered representatives watched in silence as the last of an entire species, one that had endured a genocide of unprecedented scale, departed their midst. Only later would they learn that the human's bastion of defiance did indeed burn on. For unbeknownst to the all, the ancient cryogenic facility that had housed the last survivor also contained something else. Something that would ensure the proud flame of humanity would never be extinguished, no matter how brutally the galactic powers of old sought to snuff it out. A single, unassuming chamber, marked only by a constellation of alien symbols and a solitary word inscribed in the tongue of an almost forgotten people. Genesis. The revelation of the mysterious Genesis chamber at the ancient human cryogenics facility sent shockwaves through the highest echelons of the United Systems Alliance. Though the last surviving human had departed their territory, the implications of this ominous new discovery could not be ignored. Within solar weeks, a hand-picked team of scientists and researchers was assembled to return to the frozen world of Tyre V and uncover whatever secrets lay within the Genesis chamber. They arrived with an expeditionary force, bristling with state-of-the-art excavation equipment and security personnel, a small army dedicated to unearthing the truth, whatever it may hold. What they eventually uncovered, buried kilometers beneath the Arctic permafrost, defied all conventional understanding. The Genesis chamber, it seemed, was less a traditional cryogenic facility and more of an archive, a genomic repository where the ancient humans had encoded and preserved the polygenomic essence of their species. Esoteric machines of alien design cradled glistening data, matrices, each one a genome map encoded with billions of genomic sequences representing the full genetic diversity of humanity. As the research team slowly pieced together the fragments of data, the terrible genius and forethought behind the Genesis Protocol became clear. The ancient humans, facing the obliteration of their species, had undertaken a desperate gambit. If the living could not be preserved, then at least the seeds of their genetic rebirth could be safeguarded. It's a Noah's Ark, the lead geneticist murmured, her words laced with a mixture of awe and dismay. A genomic ark to allow humanity to be reborn from the ashes of genocide. The gathered researchers shared uneasy looks as the implications sank in. Humanity, it seemed, had one final defiant act to play: the resurrection of their species from this subtly encoded genomic archive. But that revelation paled in comparison to what else the Genesis archive contained: written logs and fragmented data, cores that seemed to depict the ancient humans' ultimate contingency protocol. As horrific as their genocide had been, they had foreseen an even darker possibility: the eventuality that their attempts to preserve humanity's genome may fail or become corrupted over the immense stretches of time. In that event, the logs revealed the progenitors of humanity had encoded a final, desperate option into the Genesis Protocol: a self-sustaining bioengine designed to reboot the human genome from the subatomic level using the principles of dimensional gene forging, a mechanism to weave an entirely new sapient species from the base pairs of DNA itself, imbued with the genetic markers that would restore humanity to the universe. As the researchers' minds reeled from that profoundly alien science, one haunting fact became terrifyingly clear. According to the archived logs, the dimensional biogenesis engine had already activated countless millennia ago. As the original encoded genome banks began to degrade, the automated systems had enacted the final contingency. Somewhere out among the stars, an entirely new race of humanoids was germinating. Organisms designed by the arcane science of extinct progenitors to bring about the renaissance of humanity's lineage. Beings who would emerge into the universe as humankind's successors, destined to uphold the indomitable flame that the last surviving human had spoken of so fervently. The true rebirth of the human species had begun, the extent and form of which was anyone's guess. As the enormity of that revelation settled over the Genesis site like a blazing new star being born, the scientists could only watch in numb trepidation. For humanity's cosmic renaissance had been set in motion, and the galaxy itself would soon feel the shockwaves.